there, and welcome to another episode of our Daggerheart Open Beta Deep Dive. Today, we're going to be talking about 6 tips for GMs running Daggerheart. Be sure to stay tuned to the end, because at number 6, we're going to tell you how to literally polymorph into Matt Mercer.
Hey, look, man. We talked to our lawyer Todd about this, if you remember, and he said, and I quote, Nick's tip number 6, you can't, for legal and moral reasons, tell people how to Freaky Friday with Matt Mercer.
Fine. On today's episode, we will be giving you 5 GM tips for your next or first Daggerheart game. Better?
Thank you. Much better. Please continue.
So as we begin to dive into all of the playtest materials, one thing that became immediately apparent to me is that Daggerheart is pointing us squarely on the path of looking at GMs in a different light. You are there to synthesize and render all of the different storylines created by your players, so your role is not one purely to play their adversary. You are also their challenges, their obstacles, the environment, friends, patrons, plot twists, and even the pedestal on which our heroes can stand. All right, so let's dive right in. Tip number 1, hope and fear. I have already seen a lot of people around the internet griping about this one specifically, the hope and the fear dice, and how it adds kind of a burden to the GM. But I have good news. If you're already playing any TTRPG with any sort of personalization and flair, you're probably doing this already. Anytime that you're asking a player to make a roll, you've already determined that this is an opportunity with many possible outcomes. So as soon as the dice leave their hands, there's just so many different pathways that the narrative story could follow. Your job as the GM is simply to be the judge, the adjudicator. You determine if a roll is successful or if it fails, and then you can just sprinkle in some spice. And when in doubt, just ask the player how rolling with hope or fear changes the circumstances and the outcome for their character. You might be surprised by how invested your players really are, even in failure. Fail forward, baby! Or, to your character's death, whatever suits. Speaking of character deaths, let's talk about how that can happen with combat and banishing initiative in tip number 2. Now, I'm going to be really honest with you. As I was beginning to read all of the Daggerheart playtest materials, this kind of triggered me at first. It's because
time out. AK, I know I keep interrupting your video, but I just want to make sure that you're being honest and upfront with our audience. You're the embodiment of a chaos gremlin. Are you sure that this was an issue for you?
You're right. As I've had a little bit of time to sit with it, and upon further introspection, I will say that it's now one of my favorite major tenets behind how Daggerheart was created. And that's to say, everything about this game is urging us to follow the fiction. As I mentioned at the top, it is the GM's job to synthesize and render what your players are giving to you. And by that, I mean that they are the story and you're going wherever it is that they take you, not the other way around. How this relates to combat is once you've established that it's time to fight and the battle map has been placed on the table, you're also going to put what's called the action tracker down. Now, each time a PC takes an action, they're going to put a token on there that's called the action token, right? Feels pretty good. And so they're going to continue taking turns, acting as their character would, to maybe cast a spell, an attack, move, etc. They're going to keep doing that, placing the action tokens on the action tracker until one of them either fails or rolls with fear. And that's where you come in as the GM to add an adversary and some kind of chaos into the scene. For each action token that you have now taken off of the action tracker, you are able to do what Daggerheart calls activating an adversary. What that means is that you move them into battle to make an attack, cast a spell, clear a condition, something of that nature. You may keep acting as the adversary until you are out of these action tokens or until you're just done with your turn and ready to turn things back over to the PCs. Should you have additional action tokens still available, I might recommend that you convert them into fear tokens. Which brings us to tip number 3, fear tactics. Let's talk about fear, baby. So as the GM, whenever you'd like, you can cash in 2 action tokens for 1 fear token. And yes, we do recommend that you play with some sort of physical marker to give you a visual for how many of each of these tokens you have available. Now that could be some extra dice, leftover shards from a soul binding ritual, the bones of your enemies.
Yes, my apprentice, she's learning. She's learning, yeah!
Anywho, anytime you, the GM, have 2 fear tokens, you can use them for special circumstances such as ticking down a countdown clock. And you don't have to wait until it's your turn. Having 2 fear tokens means that you can jump in any old time you like. That means that fear isn't something you can only use in combat. Outside of it, you can use it to introduce new story elements or communicate the magnitude of some kind of complication that's coming up for your PCs. Think of it as dangling a carrot. Something big is about to happen. So let's continue down this road about some player-driven storylines with tip number 4, the flashback. This is a fantastic device to use whenever a player asks a question such as, what do I know about this tome? Or have I ever met this group? Or know anything about this deity? You could just have them roll and feed them an answer, or you could let them roleplay it. They ask where they first heard of an NPC. You as the GM go ahead and set the scene describing the environment, other NPCs that may be in the area, and then you let them actively explore it, asking questions through roleplay. That way, your characters become active participants in the scene and not just sitting there passively listening to lore dumps.
But wait, AK, I love a good lore dump. Are you telling me that those are just gone?
Not at all. I'm just offering a way to kind of mix things up and get your players actively participating rather than just talking at them. Fair?
Fair.
Finally, tip number 5, embracing the world around us. Don't forget about how your players' actions can create kind of these ripple effects out into the world, good, bad, ugly, or otherwise. Maybe your group killed a guard without asking all of the right questions. Think about that guard's relationships. Maybe they have a son who has now sworn an oath of vengeance against the party, and that'll come back to bite him in the ass later. Or maybe there are positive interactions, such as the party in one of their first encounters saved a town from a horde of skeletons. And later, one of the townsfolk that they saved will remember their kindness and bravery in that battle. Now they have an unexpected ally who might show up at the time they need it most. And while this is a good tip for any TTRPG, don't forget that as a Daggerheart GM, you have access to fear tokens. And these are something that you can kind of sprinkle out into the world and unleash some more fun, challenging chaos. Bonus points if you can also tie in your PC's backstories when you do it to help them feel even more involved and invested. And lastly, in order to become a fully formed Matt Mercer, all you're going to need is to gather the following.
Hey, really, we just can't. I'm so sorry, but we've talked about this. You gotta cut it.
Fine. For anybody listening that's not Fitz, I'll drop the instructions in our Discord server. The link is in the show notes. Anyways,
I heard that.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of our Daggerheart Open Beta Deep Dive, How to Become a Great GM. We'll see you next time. Bye! Snack, snack, patty whack.
Get yourself a knapsack.
Now, for each token that you have picked up from the action tracker, you can begin.
You begin.
Okay. Now.
Meow. You should do the super trooper thing, and every time you say now, say meow instead, and just see if anybody notices.
Meow. For each token on the action tractor. Action tractor.
Let's hitch up the tractor, baby.
Yeah.